The first time Elias Carter saw the Elari princess, he did not expect to be the one holding her life in his hands. The palace hall was bright with alien light, walls that shimmered like liquid silver, and structures that curved in impossible ways. He had heard stories of the Elari, tall, graceful beings with skin that reflected subtle colors, their eyes deep pools that seemed to see beyond the surface of reality. But hearing about them was nothing compared to standing in the middle of their world. Elias was a medic, trained in the chaotic art of trauma care, used to dealing with human injuries in war zones and disaster areas. Yet as he looked around the vast hall, he felt small and inexperienced. Humans were few here, invited as observers and learners but never as equals. And yet today, circumstance was about to force him into a role he had never imagined. It began with a sound, a sharp, piercing crack that echoed through the palace corridors. Guards shouted, their voices alien in tone, and the crowd scattered. Elias felt the ground shake beneath his feet. Something was wrong. Someone screamed, and then he saw her. Princess Lyra, tall and luminous even in distress, had been struck. A shadowy figure had lunged from above, aiming for the royal dais, and she had taken the brunt of the attack. Her body collapsed against the gleaming floor, and the crowd froze. Panic surged through the hall. Without thinking, Elias pushed forward, navigating the terrified crowd. Every step felt heavy, every second stretched. He reached the princess just as two Elari guards fell back, stunned. She was breathing but faintly, and her silver-tinged blood spread over the polished floor. He crouched beside her, careful not to touch more than necessary. "Stay with me," he whispered, more to steady himself than to speak to her. His hands moved instinctively, checking her pulse, her breathing, the wounds that were deep and strangely patterned. He had studied alien anatomy briefly in preparation for the mission, but seeing it in reality was something else entirely. A soft voice broke through the chaos. "Your hands are far too gentle. They carry a force that can heal, if guided correctly." "Can you stabilize her?" one of the palace guards asked. Elias took a deep breath. "I can try. She needs to stay conscious and keep her heart steady." He gently moved a hand to support her shoulder. "Can someone clear this area?" He worked methodically, cleaning wounds, pressing compresses, and adjusting her position. The Elari healer, the one who had spoken, watched him closely, her hands folded. Elias could feel her eyes measuring his every movement. Minutes passed, though to Elias they felt like hours. Lyra's breathing began to stabilize, and her pulse strengthened slightly. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he did not stop. He had learned long ago that hesitation could be deadly in emergencies. Finally, the healer spoke again. "Your methods are unusual. Perhaps your kind brings a perspective we lack." It was not just medical skill keeping her alive. It was human persistence, human care, human touch. The sound of alarms echoed again through the hall. The attackers were not finished. Elias knew that if they struck again, the palace would fall into chaos. The Elari guards were strong and fast, but humans had advantages too, the ability to think quickly, to improvise, to see patterns others might miss. "Step back," he told the guard nearest him. "I need space to work." He moved around the princess, assessing the room and the surrounding hallways. Something in the way the attackers had moved suggested intelligence, strategy, and a dangerous level of planning. This was no random raid. The healer stepped closer to him, her voice barely audible. "If you survive what is coming, your hands may prove more than gentle. Your kind may be weak in the ways of combat, but you have strengths that none of us anticipated. Keep that in mind." He would find a way to adapt, to survive, and to protect. With the crowd cleared, he took stock of Lyra's injuries. Her skin was alien but delicate, her pulse faint but steady, and her breath shallow but regular. Using the supplies from his medical pack, he applied antiseptics, bound her wounds, and monitored her vital signs. Each action was deliberate, slow, precise. There was no room for error. The palace guards murmured among themselves, clearly unsure whether to trust him. Elias ignored them. All that mattered was keeping her alive. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time had a strange quality in moments of crisis. Outside, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows through the towering crystal windows. The attackers had been driven off for now, but Elias knew this was only the beginning. Finally, Lyra stirred more fully, her breathing steadying. She looked at him with gratitude in her alien eyes, a silent acknowledgement of his efforts. Elias smiled faintly, exhausted but relieved. The healer approached, her eyes softening slightly. "You have done well," she said. "But do not mistake survival for mastery. There is much you do not yet understand about this world." And for the first time since he arrived in the palace, Elias felt that human gentleness, human care, patience, and thoughtfulness could truly make a difference. The universe was larger, stranger, and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. But for the first time, he believed humans had a role to play beyond mere observation. As he prepared to rest for the night, Elias kept one hand near the princess, ensuring she was stable. The hall was quiet now, the sounds of chaos replaced by the soft hum of alien energy and distant footsteps. But he knew this calm was temporary. Tomorrow would bring challenges he could not yet imagine, yet he also knew something else. No matter how strange, how dangerous, or how alien the world around him might be, human qualities, patience, gentleness, empathy, and courage, could hold power in ways others might never understand. And perhaps, just perhaps, his hands, so gentle in their nature, could change the fate of an entire species. The morning light filtered through the palace windows, casting long, curved shadows across the floor. Elias Carter woke to the soft hum of the Ilari Palace. Every surface seemed to shimmer as if alive, and the air carried a faint pulse, a rhythm he could not name. He had slept little, his mind replaying the previous day, the attack, the sudden responsibility of keeping Princess Lyra alive, and the whispered words of the healer, Vela. Lyra lay across from him on a specially designed bed. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes were closed in rest. He approached quietly, mindful of the delicate bandages across her arms and torso. The injuries were not ordinary, burns that shimmered faintly, bruises that seemed to pulse, and small, almost imperceptible marks that hinted at something more than physical pain. Elias had treated countless trauma cases in his career, but nothing quite like this. Vela appeared without warning, her movements as graceful as the flow of water. She studied Lyra for a moment, then looked at Elias. "You see only what you can touch," she said. "There is more inside her than flesh and blood. The attack left shadows upon her mind as well as her body." He had never dealt with psychic injuries. Humans understood the mind and body in ways that were often simple and direct, but psychic damage was beyond his experience. And yet, the Ilari healer's calm confidence suggested that he had a role to play. Vela guided him to a quiet chamber, walls glowing softly with colors that shifted and danced. "We will teach you," she said. "But you must open yourself. Human strength lies not only in your muscles, but in your perception. Learn to feel what is not seen." Gentle hands, careful observation, and thoughtful patience could change the outcome of even the direst situation. The first lesson began with silence. Vela instructed him to place his hands near Lyra without touching her. He felt a strange energy radiating from her body, not warmth, but a vibration he could sense in his bones. His instincts told him to step back, but he remembered her words. Human perception could guide what technology or alien ability could not. He focused, breathing slowly, letting his attention expand. Hours passed in quiet observation. At first, Elias felt nothing, only frustration. But gradually he began to notice subtle shifts. A flicker in the shimmer of her skin, a faint pulse in the bruises, a tiny wave that seemed to echo the rhythm of her thoughts. It was not magic, he realized, but a resonance. His presence, steady and unhurried, seemed to soothe her body and mind in ways the Ilari instruments could not. Vela watched silently. "Your gentleness allows her energy to settle," she said. "You have a connection that many of my people cannot achieve. It is rare among your kind." Healing a wounded princess, learning alien techniques, and understanding psychic shadows were challenges far greater than anything he had faced on Earth. But for the first time, he felt that humans, ordinary humans, could contribute in ways that mattered. Lyra stirred, her eyes opening slowly. The violet irises met his gaze, and she gave a weak smile. "I remember your hands," she whispered. "They calm me." The simplicity of his words, the steadiness of his presence, seemed to reach her in ways that sophisticated healing methods could not. Later that day, he was called to another room. The palace had become a hive of activity as the Ilari recovered from the attack and assessed their defenses. Vela escorted him to a chamber where holographic projections floated midair, showing diagrams of Ilari anatomy, energy flow, and psychic resonance. "These are the injuries left by the attackers," Vela explained. "Their technology can disrupt thought patterns and manipulate energy within the body. Most Ilari can recover, but the princess's injuries are complex. You must learn to guide her gently, using both your mind and your hands." Vela guided him as he placed his hands near Lyra, sensing fluctuations in energy, subtle waves of discomfort or tension. He adjusted his focus, learning to follow the rhythm of her body, the gentle pulses of her mind. At first, the princess winced, small tremors running through her form, but gradually she relaxed. Elias noticed a faint color shift in her skin, a quiet confirmation that his method was working. "You are learning faster than I expected," Vela said. "Humans have intuition that our techniques cannot replicate. It is a strength often hidden by your fragility." Perhaps that was what the healer meant when she whispered about his gentle hands. They could calm, soothe, and heal. They could also solve problems that brute force could not. As the day wore on, news arrived that unsettled the palace. Scouts had detected unusual movements outside the capital, signs that the attackers had not fled entirely. A second strike was possible, even likely. The palace staff moved with precision, but tension filled the air. Elias felt it too, a knot in his stomach, yet alongside the worry he felt resolve. Lyra was awake when he returned to her side, sitting up with some effort. Her voice was weak but clear. "Do you believe humans can help us?" she asked. Elias considered the question carefully. "Yes," he said finally. "We are not the strongest and we are not fast, but we can adapt. We can think differently. Sometimes that is enough to survive." They had other tools: patience, observation, ingenuity, and compassion. Tools that could shift outcomes in ways no one expected. Over the next few days, Elias continued his work. Each session brought him closer to understanding the princess's injuries, both physical and psychic. He learned to sense patterns, to anticipate discomfort, and to adjust his touch accordingly. The Elari healer guided him, but often it was Elias' human intuition that made the difference. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the palace in a golden glow, Lyra spoke again. "Your hands, they are far too gentle for what you have done," she said. "But perhaps that is why you were able to help me." Sometimes, the quiet approach matters more than the strong one. He felt a surge of determination. The attackers might return. Danger could strike again. But he now knew that humans could face challenges in ways others could not imagine. That strength could lie in gentleness, in observation, and in the courage to care when everything else seemed chaotic. The night passed quietly, but Elias knew it would not last. The palace, the princess, and perhaps even the future of human-Elari relations depended on what came next. He had learned something crucial. Humans had a place in this vast, strange universe, not as conquerors, but as steady hands, thoughtful minds, and resilient hearts. And as he sat beside Lyra, ready to face the coming days, he felt a confidence he had never known. The world outside the palace might be dangerous, and the enemies unknown, but Elias Carter understood one simple truth. Humans, in their gentleness, could achieve what others could not. The palace was quieter than usual, yet an undercurrent of tension pulsed through its halls. Elias Carter walked alongside Vela, moving between rooms filled with softly glowing instruments and shifting holographic projections. Though he had learned much about Elari healing, his mind was restless. The warning signs from the scouts weighed on him. Something told him the attackers were not finished, and their methods were cleverer than he had imagined. "Do you feel it?" Vela asked suddenly, her voice calm but sharp. "The shadows outside these walls." Human ingenuity had saved lives countless times on Earth, but now the stakes were higher. The palace, the princess, and even the fragile trust between humans and Elari rested on his ability to adapt. Returning to Lyra's chamber, he found her awake, sitting upright and more alert than before. She gave him a small, knowing smile. "You have learned quickly," she said. "I can feel it not just in my body, but here," she tapped lightly on her chest. "Your presence steadies me." The injuries that had once made her weak now seemed to improve under his care, but Elias knew it was not just healing, it was preparation. As evening fell, the palace gates shook under the first signs of an approaching threat. Scouts had detected small groups of masked figures moving through the forested outskirts of the capital. They were fast, coordinated, and clearly aware of the palace's defenses. Elias could feel the tension spike in the air, the subtle vibrations of fear and anticipation that the Elari emitted. Vela approached him again. "You will need to act," she said. "These attackers are not ordinary. Their technology disrupts thought, their weapons manipulate energy. Many of our guards will falter." The Elari were strong, agile, and precise, but they were accustomed to predictable strategies. Humans, by contrast, thrived in improvisation and adaptability. When the first wave of attackers appeared at the perimeter, Elias was ready. He moved quickly, signaling guards, adjusting defenses, and creating diversions. The Elari were startled by his methods, small but effective changes that confused the intruders. Where brute force would have failed, human ingenuity worked. In one corridor, a group of attackers advanced toward Lyra's chamber. Elias intercepted them with a calm command that belied his racing heart. He used the palace's energy flows, subtle movements of light and shadows, to channel their attention and slow their advance. The attackers stumbled, unprepared for a strategy that relied on observation and timing rather than strength. By the time the guards regrouped, the intruders were disoriented. Elias guided them through the palace, signaling safe routes and redirecting forces where needed. Every decision was precise, every movement calculated, yet he remained flexible, adjusting to unexpected changes. Lyra, observing from her chamber, could not hide her astonishment. "Your mind is like a weapon," she whispered to Vela. "It strikes without harm, yet it protects." They expect strength, speed, or psychic power. They do not expect patience, observation, and subtlety. He used his human reasoning to anticipate their tactics, turning each attempt into an opportunity to protect rather than fight. Hours passed, and the palace seemed alive with tension and strategy. Elias moved continuously, never tiring, his mind sharp. He coordinated human volunteers and willing Elari, creating a network of observation and response that the attackers had never predicted. Small teams moved under his guidance, using subtle distractions, careful positioning, and rapid communication to outmaneuver the enemy. At one point, an attacker breached a side corridor and confronted a group of Elari guards. Elias, arriving just in time, used a combination of human reasoning and improvisation. He directed the guards to a controlled choke point where their strength could be effective without risking overwhelming numbers. The intruder was subdued without anyone sustaining serious injury. Through it all, Lyra watched. Her admiration for Elias grew with every decision he made. "I underestimated humans," she admitted quietly. "They are not the strongest, yet they survive. They adapt. And they think differently." Humans had been underestimated in countless battles on Earth, and now that same underestimated quality, resilience, adaptability, and intellect, was keeping an alien princess alive. As the night wore on, the attackers began to retreat, thwarted at every turn by strategies they did not expect. The palace, though tested, remained intact. Elias moved back to Lyra's side, exhausted but resolute. She reached for his hand, a simple gesture that conveyed trust and gratitude. "You have done more than heal me," she said softly. "You have protected us all. Your kind has shown that strength is not always in muscle or speed. Sometimes it is in presence, calculation, and care. You are an example we will remember." The princess, now steady and alert, looked at him with respect. "Your hands, your mind, it is all connected. You do not harm, yet you defend. That is something few can do." Patience, care, and observation could be weapons in their own right, capable of turning the tide when brute strength failed. As dawn approached, the palace began to settle. Guards regrouped, the wounded were tended, and the echoes of battle faded into silence. Elias stood beside Lyra, watching as the first rays of light illuminated the crystal halls. "This is only the beginning," Vela said quietly. "There will be more trials, more threats, but you have proven that humans can face them, not with raw power, but with intelligence, adaptability, and will. Remember that." His mind, his patience, his ability to think creatively under pressure would be just as important. Humans were capable of much more than others assumed. Lyra reached for his hand once more, and Elias took it gently. There was no magic in the gesture, no force. It was simply human touch, steady and reassuring. And in that moment, he felt a connection that transcended species, a bond forged in trust and shared survival. Elias knew the palace would face future threats, but he also knew something profound. Humans had gifts that no alien weapon, no psychic manipulation, no technology could replace. The gentle, observant, adaptable mind could change outcomes in ways that brute force never could. And as the first morning light bathed the palace in warmth, Elias felt ready. Whatever trials lay ahead, humans would meet them. Not because they were the strongest, but because they were clever, compassionate, and determined. The attackers had underestimated them once. They would not underestimate humanity again. The palace was on high alert. Elias Carter moved through its halls, a careful observer, noting every detail. Guards patrolled in synchronized patterns, energy barriers shimmered along walls and doors, and Lyra's chamber had been reinforced with both technology and subtle psychic wards. Yet Elias knew that no matter how strong the defenses appeared, the attackers would not come unprepared. They had learned from their first failure, and he had to anticipate their next move. Vela joined him quietly, her robes gliding across the polished floor. "Tonight they will strike again," she said. "Stronger, faster, more cunning. Many of our people rely on raw power. That is why your presence matters. Your kind sees differently." He had been training alongside the Elari, observing the subtle flows of energy, sensing their patterns and learning to combine his human methods with their techniques. He understood now that gentleness, patience, and observation could be weapons, not in the way of swords or energy pulses, but in guiding outcomes, protecting the vulnerable and turning chaos into opportunity. Lyra appeared at the door of her chamber, wrapped in soft, silken garments that glowed faintly in the low light. Her injuries had healed significantly, though her strength was not yet fully restored. She looked at Elias with a determined expression. "We face them again. Are you ready? Then we will act together. You are not alone." He had a plan, and he would use every skill he had learned from observing the palace, the guards, and the subtle energy around him. He signaled to the guards stationed near the outer halls. "Use the left corridor. Redirect them toward the energy field traps. Do not engage directly until they are disoriented. Observe, adapt, and act. That is your strength." As the attackers adjusted, Elias guided the guards to create controlled movement, leading them into positions where they could be contained without risk to Lyra or the palace. Every decision was deliberate, every movement measured, and the attackers began to realize that the humans and Elari were not as easy to outmaneuver as they had believed. In the central hall, a larger group of attackers breached the outer defenses, moving with energy weapons that emitted disorienting pulses. Elias acted quickly, coordinating guards to form protective lines and using subtle signals to redirect their attention. He moved closer to Lyra, ensuring that she remained safe behind reinforced wards while still allowing her to monitor the palace. "You think too small," one of the attackers hissed through a translator device. "Your walls and guards will not stop us this time." Sometimes it is in thought and care. Lyra, watching from her chamber, felt a surge of admiration. "Humans are clever," she whispered. "They do not rely on strength alone, they see the bigger picture." Elias adapted to each move, thinking quickly, combining observation with intuition, and guiding both species in coordinated countermeasures. He had learned to sense the flow of energy, not just as a physical presence, but as a map of opportunity. At one point, an attacker reached a central hallway and aimed a device toward Lyra's chamber. Elias intercepted them using a combination of distraction, clever positioning, and subtle energy manipulations taught by Vela. The intruder was forced back, confused, and the threat was neutralized without harm to anyone. Lyra watched in awe. "Your mind is a shield," she said softly. "It protects without striking." They are underestimated because they do not look strong, but their strength lies in thought, courage, and care. Elias embodies this. They have weaknesses, and we know them. Not through brute force or technology, but through observation, careful thinking, and the steady application of knowledge. Throughout the night, he continued to coordinate defenses, ensuring that every corridor, every guard, and every strategy was optimized for both human and Elari strengths. He combined his understanding of human psychology, logic, and adaptability with Vela's knowledge of energy and psychic flows. Together, they created a system of defense that the attackers could not anticipate. By the early hours of morning, the palace was secure once more. The attackers had retreated, unable to breach the coordinated defenses. Elias moved to Lyra's side, exhausted but steady. She looked at him, eyes reflecting trust and respect. "You have done more than heal me," she said. "You have guided us, protected us, and proven that humans are invaluable allies. You have shown that even in a world of advanced technology and alien power, human qualities, mind, patience, compassion, are a force to be reckoned with. Never forget that." Guards moved with renewed confidence, and the princess, though still recovering, stood taller. Elias knew that humans had proven something important, not just to the Elari, but to themselves. The attackers had underestimated them once, relying on the assumption that humans were weak and fragile. They had been wrong. Humans could think, adapt, and protect. They could survive and even thrive in situations that seemed impossible. Lyra reached for Elias' hand once more. "Your hands, your mind, your heart, all of it matters," she said. "Do not underestimate yourselves. Humans may be gentle, but you are capable of greatness." Their greatest strength was not in what they could overpower, but in what they could perceive, understand, and guide. As he looked out over the palace gardens, now quiet under the early morning light, he understood something profound. The battles to come would test strength, skill, and resolve, but humans were ready. They had shown that even without alien power, their intelligence, adaptability, and compassion could change outcomes, protect the vulnerable, and shift the course of events. And Elias Carter, a simple human medic, had become an example of what humanity could achieve. Gentle hands, careful thought, and unwavering determination had turned the tide. The palace was safe for now, but the challenges ahead would demand even more. Elias felt a quiet determination rise within him. Humans had proven themselves once. They would do it again whenever needed. And the attackers, no matter how strong or cunning, would never underestimate the power of human ingenuity again. The palace was quiet now, but the tension from the previous nights lingered in the air. Elias Carter moved through the halls, checking on guards and ensuring that all defenses were intact. He had spent days learning, observing, and guiding the Elari, and the lessons had been hard but invaluable. Humans were fragile compared to the Elari in physical strength and psychic ability, yet they had proven that intelligence, patience, and careful observation could tip the balance in life-or-death situations. Lyra was awake, sitting in her chamber, stronger and steadier than the day before. Her violet eyes caught his as he entered, and for a moment the chaos of the past days fell away. The palace had survived, and though the attackers might return, Elias knew that humanity's role here was secure. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm and clear. "The palace stands thanks to you. You think, observe, adapt, and that makes you dangerous in ways many underestimate. You have shown that." In the afternoon, Lyra requested that Elias join her in the central garden, a wide space filled with glowing plants and gently flowing water. It was calm and serene, a sharp contrast to the recent turmoil. As they walked, she spoke quietly. "Tell me, Elias, do humans often surprise others this way? But we notice things others overlook. We adapt, and we care even when it seems small. That can make all the difference. Your hands, they are gentle, yet they have done more than most could with strength. I understand now what Vela meant. Your presence has guided me, protected me, and even healed me in ways that technology and psychic skill could not." Here in an alien world, his skills, intuition, and careful observation had been enough to save a princess and preserve a palace. "They will return," he said, breaking the silence. "The attackers will not give up so easily, but we have learned, we are ready. You see opportunities that others miss. That is a strength beyond power." He had always known that humans were capable of great things, but he had never imagined that they would be recognized by an alien civilization as such. It was a moment of validation, yet it carried the weight of responsibility. In the evening, the palace held a small assembly to honor the defense and recovery. Elari leaders and human representatives gathered together. Lyra spoke first, her voice firm and clear. "The humans among us have shown courage, intelligence, and care. They have proven that strength comes in many forms. It is not always the one with the largest body or the sharpest weapon who prevails. Sometimes it is the one who observes, adapts, and acts with thought and patience. We owe them our gratitude. And perhaps more than the palace, you have shown us what humans can do. Your people may seem small, fragile, but you are capable of greatness in ways we never expected. You have earned my trust, my respect, and perhaps more importantly, the trust of my people." The lessons had been learned. The strength of humans was not in muscle or speed, but in mind, heart, and will. Elias continued his work with Lyra, not only in healing, but in training guards and volunteers to think strategically, observe carefully, and act deliberately. The palace learned from humans as humans learned from the Elari. It was a partnership that promised more than survival. It promised understanding and growth. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, Lyra invited Elias to walk along the outer terraces. The stars reflected in the polished floors, and a gentle wind carried the scent of glowing flowers. She turned to him, her expression serene. "You have changed our perception of humans. We thought you fragile, unpredictable, but you are neither. You are capable, patient, and adaptable. Your mind is as sharp as any weapon we possess. Your kind has proven its value, and perhaps in time our worlds will learn to trust and respect each other more because of it. Your calm, careful, and observant nature has protected lives and inspired confidence. Remember this as you return to your world. And perhaps in the right circumstances, our presence can make a difference." Lyra continued to heal fully, both physically and mentally, and her trust in Elias and humanity grew with every passing day. On the final day before Elias returned to Earth, Lyra approached him with a gift, small, delicate, and glowing faintly in the sunlight. "This is for you," she said, "a reminder of your time here and the difference you made. Your presence will not be forgotten, and perhaps in the wider universe as well." Their gentleness, intelligence, and persistence could alter outcomes, protect the vulnerable, and inspire confidence in ways the universe did not yet fully recognize. And as the stars stretched across the sky above the palace, Elias Carter knew one simple truth: humans had a place in the cosmos. Not as conquerors or warriors, but as thinkers, observers, and steady hands that could guide, protect, and heal. That was strength. That was humanity. And for now, it had saved a princess, defended a palace, and earned a place in the hearts of a civilization far beyond Earth.